Beautiful. So says the Mishnah, a person is required to have children. He's not allowed to stop from doing the mitzvah of Pirya Verivya unless he already has children. How many children does he need? Beishamai Omrim Shnei Zacharim. Beishamai says he's required to have two males. Beisil Omrim Zachar and Akeva. Beisil says he's required to have a male and a female, as it states in the Torah, Zachar and Akeva Bira'am. Male and female, he created them. So Zak the Gemara also says the Gemara. Do we learn from here? Because do we learn from here that if he has children, can we infer from the language of the Mishnah that he's not required to have more children, but he is required to have a wife, because it just says he's not required to have children. So doesn't this prove Messiah or Rav Nachman? Doesn't this prove, isn't this a support for Rav Nachman, who stated, isn't this a proof for Rav Nachman? What did Rav Nachman state? In the name of Shmuel, the Amar Afal Pisha Yeshlo Adam Kama Banim also Amar Bloisha. Even though a person has several children, he's not allowed to be without a wife, as it states, Lo Tova Yosla Adam Levado. So let's say that this is a proof for Rav Nachman's position, because Rav Nachman says that you're required to be married. And we'll learn from here, from the fact that the Mishnah states that if you have that you're required to have children, but it doesn't. You're not required to have more children, but it doesn't say you're not required to be married. We see from here that you're required to be married, and that's a proof for Shmuel, Rav Nachman's statement in the name of Shmuel. Alternatively, we can read it like this: that if he has children, alternatively, we can learn from here that if he has children, he no longer has required to have children. And guess what? He's also not required to do. He's also not required to be married. So that's how you can learn from there. Tosfos says we learn it out from there because it doesn't say in the Mishnah, it doesn't say he has to marry a woman who has children unless he has children. So Tosfos infers it from that language. So let's learn from here that he's nullified. You have to do Rav Nachman or Shmuel. So isn't this a refutation? Mar says no, it's not a refutation. This is how we read it. If he has no children, no say isha baspanim. He has to marry a woman who has children. If he has children, no say isha delav baspanim. He has to get married to a woman. He can even marry a woman who no longer can give him children or is not able to give him children. So if he has children already, he doesn't have to marry a woman who's childbearing. But if he doesn't have children, he has to marry a woman who's capable of giving him children. Nafkamina, and how is there what's the practical distinction? Limkor Sefer Torah b'shvil banim. That you're allowed to sell your Sefer Torah in order to get married, but you're only allowed to do this if you already have children. You're only allowed to sell your Torah scroll in order to marry a wife. You can't sell. You're not going to be able to sell your Torah scroll in order to marry a wife and give you children, because you're not required to have children anymore. So you could even do and presumably the dowry would be less if you're marrying a woman who's not capable of having children. Okay, Beis Shammai says that who do you marry? Beis Shammai says how many children do you need to have? Beis Shammai says two males. My time out of Beis Shammai. What's the logic behind Beis Shammai's position that you're required to get married? You're required to have two males. Yalfina mi Moshe. He learns that from Moses, because it says by Moses, they'll say, B'nai Moshe, Gershom ve'Eliezer. Moses had two children, Gershom and Eliezer. Ubeis Hillel, and how does Beis Hillel know you're supposed to have a male and a female? Yalfinam mi briyaso she'olam. Beis Hillel says we learn it out from the creation of the world, because when God created the world, who did God create? Adam and Eve. So you see, you need a male and a female. Beis Shammai will from mi briyaso she'olam. Why doesn't Beis Shammai learn it out from the creation of the world? He says they ain't done an Avshar Mashiach. He says we're no longer at creation of the world. God had no choice then. You have to make a male and a female. So, but now we have options. Let everybody else have the girls, and you just have the boys. That's basically what he's saying. So, Beis Hillel, why does Beis Hillel say you need a boy and a girl? Why doesn't he learn it out from Moses? Beis Hillel nami lo from Moshe. Why doesn't Beis Hillel learn out from Moses? But he says Moses, he did that on his own. So Moses on his own decided it was just for Moses, but for everybody else, you need a boy and a girl. And how do we know Moses did it on his own? There's a brisa. We're in the top of 62a. There are three things that Moses did on his own, and these are they. And God and his opinion agreed with God. What are the three things? Pirishan mina isha. That Moses left his wife and he separated from her after he had two children, two boys. V'shibir aluchos. Moses broke the tablets. V'hosif yom echad. And Moses also, God had said to separate before Mount Sinai. God said separate for 2 days, and Moses said separate for 3 days. And God agreed to Moses's decision to separate for 3 days. So says the Gemara. Pirish min Aisha, how come Moshe separated from his wife, my Darish? What was his exposition of the verse? Amar Uma Yisrael Shlo Dibrei Mayim Shlina Elaf Isha. So Moshe said like this: the Shlina only spoke to the Jewish people that one time, the Kavod Hamzman, and still God established with them, and God told them when He's going to come and speak to them, and still Amar Torah, and still the Torah says Al Tikshel Isha, don't be with your wife for 2 days, or Moshe is going to change it to 3 days. God can come to me in any moment. God didn't tell me when he's coming. For sure I can't be with my wife, because if he's with his wife, he's going to be ritually impure. And how's he going to speak to God in that manner? And God agreed with him, or his opinion agreed with God, as it states, God says, go tell the Jewish people, you go back to your tents. Moshe was the only one who was told not to go back to their wives. You stay with me. So there is celibacy amongst Jewish people, but it's only for Moshe Rabbeinu. Everybody else cannot. Everybody else is not supposed to be celibate. Shiberes haluchos. How do we know that Moshe agreed with God when he broke the luchos? My darash, what was his drush? It says, just like the mitzvah of Karban Pesach is one of 613 commandments, and Amar Torah, and the Torah says, Kol ben nechar lo yochal bo. Anybody who's not circumcised is missing one mitzvah, cannot eat from the Karban Pesach. HaTorah kula, the entire Torah of Yisrael mumarim, and all the Jewish people are mumarim. They're rejecting the whole Torah. They're heretics. How much more so should they not be able to receive the Torah? So he broke it. And Hashem agreed with him because it states Asher Shibarta. It says in the verse, make new tablets for the luchos that you broke. Asher Shibarta, that you broke. And what do we learn from here? We learn from here of Amar Shlakish, Amar Hakadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. That Rish Lakish said, God said to Moshe, Yasher kochacha sheshibarta. Good job breaking the tablets. So we see from here that God agreed with Moses here. Yasher koach sheshibarta. And what's the third way in which God agreed with Moses? Hosif yom echad midaito. That Moshe added on one approach, 1 day on his own, because God had said to separate 2 days before Mount Sinai. My dara, and Moshe said 3 days. My dara, it says in the verse, what does it say in the verse? God says to Moshe, go to the people, sanctify yourselves today and tomorrow, wash your garments, and then you'll receive the Torah. Moshe said, Hayom kimachar, today is like tomorrow, meaning to say, ma machar laila imo, just like tomorrow needs to be a full day. So today it needs to be a full day. And he says, but we can't count today because we already missed today. So we see from here, so Moses says it needs to be 2 days aside from today, and so therefore it needs to be a full 3 days. So it states, and that's what happened. Shema mina v'eskimu daito adas hamakom, and so that's why it says 2 days aside from today, and so that's how we got to 3 days. V'eskimu daito adas hamakom, and God agreed with him. The lo shar yashlina ad Shabbat. So that's why. What day was Shavuos on? In the time of the giving of the Sinai, it was on a Shabbos. And how do we look at the Rashi? Ad Shabbasa, b'Mesachah Shabbos, Parak Rebbe Akiva, Daf Pei Vav Amud Aleph, Pei Vav and Pei Zayin. If you want to We learned something on Shavuos night. You learned Shabbos 86a and 86b and 87a. Those are the Gemaras about Sinai. So what happened there? Gamrina law, we learned the Avot Prisha Ba'arba B'Shabbat. They separated on Wednesday during the day. Then they separated all of Thursday and all of Friday. And then on Shabbos, the Shechina appeared. And so therefore, that's the third day after 2 complete days. And the first day we didn't count because as one of the 2 days because it wasn't a complete day. So Tanya, back to the dispute. How many children do you need to add to fulfill the mitzvah of Puru? Tanya, Rabbi Nassan Omar. Rabbi Nassan said, Beis Shammai says, Shnei zachar mashtei nekalos. You need 2 males and 2 females. Oh, wow. So double it. Beisil Omer zachar unakeva. Beisil says a male and a female. Amar Afuna, my time into Rabbi Nassan. Aliba de Beis Shammai. Why does Rabbi Nassan say, according to Beis Shammai, you need 2 males and 2 females? Because it says in the pasuk, "Vatosef waledes es achiv es hevel," and so that it says that Eve continued to give birth to his brother to Hevel. Hevel v'achoso, Cain v'achoso. So Adam and Eve, they had Hevel, and Hevel had a sister, and Cain had a sister. And it says afterwards, "V'ksiv kishasli elokim zera acher tachas Hevel ki argo Cain." And because she said, because God made for me another seed in place of Hevel because Cain killed him. And the Rabbanan say, and the word, how do we learn it? We learn it out from the word Cain es Hevel. The S in his Rebuyan Hain to tell us that when Cain was born, he had a sister born with him. And when Hevel was born, he had a sister born with him. And then she says, Kishasli zeracher tachas Hevel. Rashi says this teaches us she needed to make up. Because she lost Hevel, so she needed another boy, and she needed another girl, and that's why she made it up. She had to make it up. Hold on.
But then would it be 3 and 3?
I'm sorry, you got to speak up.
Would it be 3 and 3?
No, because they. So
just counting Hevel.
Yeah, but it must have been that she needed another boy to make up for Hevel dying, because that's what we're going to say. Once the child dies, it doesn't count. That's what we're going to see. Ki hargo Cain, because Cain killed him. The Rabbanan, Oduyu Dekamodis. And the Rabbanan said, no, she was just giving thanks to God. Tanya Ida, the Bryce says, alternative Bryce, we're going to see back to Hillel's question at the bottom of the page. Rabbi Nassan Omer Beis Shammai Omer Zachar Nekeva. Beis Shammai says you need a male and a female. And Beis Hillel says, O Zachar or Nekeva, either a male or a female. Amar Rav Amai Taima, the Rabbi Nassan, according to this approach, why does Beis Shammai say you need a male and a female? But according to Beis Hillel, he says either one male or one female. According to the first approach, Rabbi Nassan says you need 4. According to this approach, you only need 1, either a male or a female. What's the reasoning? The world was created, there's a verse from Isaiah, in order for it to be settled. By having a child, you're settling the world. We learned let's say you have children when you're not Jewish. Then you convert. Do you fulfill the mitzvah of Puravu? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kiyim period of Rabbi Yochanan says you're good. You fulfill the mitzvah. Rish Lakish Amar Lokiyim period of Rabbi. By the way, according to Rabbi Yochanan, as you fulfill the mitzvah, that's only if your children convert with you. The Shulchan Aruch says, but if they don't convert with you, you don't. Rish Lakish says you have not fulfilled the mitzvah of Puravu. Rabbi Yochanan says Kiyim period of Rabbi. Rabbi Yochanan says that if you have the children when you're not Jewish, you fulfill the mitzvah of Puravu. He has children. Rish Lakish Amar Lo Kiyem period of Rabbi. Rish Lakish says you have not fulfilled it. It is a very, very important statement. Why? Because a convert who converts is a very famous phrase in the Talmud. When a convert converts, it's like they're a newborn child. And so therefore, any relationships that they had before, they're like a new person. And so it's almost like they're not their children and they're reborn. And so therefore, they need to have more children to fulfill the mitzvah of Puravu. And they follow their logic. Let's say you have children when you're not Jewish, and then you convert. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan says, well, now he has no children. If the child now that he now has as a Jew, the firstborn, it's not going to be considered his firstborn to inherit a double portion. Because he already had the first seed when he was not Jewish. Reish Lakish says the child, no, that first child is going to have as a Jew is going to get a double portion because Gerish and Iskar Kikatan Shanoan Dami. Because now that when a convert converts, it's like a newborn child. We need them to argue in both cases, both by the mitzvah of Puravu and by the mitzvah of, and by the laws of inheritance. If we just had the teaching by whether or not you fulfill the mitzvah of Puravu, we would say by Hikam or Rabbi Yochanan. In that case, Rabbi Yochanan says you fulfill the mitzvah mishum demi karanami b'nei period because you had children. But when it comes to inheritance, maybe they just don't inherit you. Maybe you'll agree with Rish Lakish. If we only had the case of the inheritance, there Rish Lakish says that under that case they inherit you. But maybe about Puravu, maybe he agrees with Rabbi Yochanan, so we need both cases. Rabbi Yochanan challenges Rish Lakish. It says, so what does Rish Lakish say? He says that idolaters don't inherit, and also says you have not fulfilled the mitzvah of Puravu. So Rabbi Yochanan challenges Rish Lakish because we cite the pasuk from Melachim Bet. It says, "Va'isai shalach beradach baladan ben baladan melch bavel." It shows that they have all these children, and even though they were idolaters, and it's still we're going to count their children. So the Gemara says, "Amoi bioson of the kochavim islo isu chayis." He says, when they're idolaters, then we're going to consider them that like they're their children. But once they convert, it's a different lineage. So Amar Rav taught Akol Modim Be'eved. Everybody agrees by a slave she'en lo chayis. The slave does not have genealogy, does not have lineage. When Abraham says to his servants who stayed back, when he took Isaac up the mountain, he says to his servants, you stay here with the donkey, which means I'm a nation that's similar to a donkey. He challenges, do you really say that slaves have no children? Because it states again in the verse in 2 Samuel chapter 9, it says, and it says that about Siva, that Siva has 15 it says that Siva has 15 children and 20 slaves. And Siva was the Canaanite slave of Mephibosheth. And we see that he has children. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Achmar Yaakov, Kafar ben Bakar. No, it's like a cow. It's meaning to say, they're not giving him lineage, they're just stating a fact. Just like a cow has offspring, or a cow is the offspring of a cattle, so to here also, he has children, but they're not genealogy. If that's the case about Biradach and Baladan, why do we give the same explanation? Why do we have to say that they had lineage when they're non-Jew? Why don't we just say they were just biological facts, but not genealogy or lineage? That case is different because it lists all their names. Here it doesn't list all their names. Or alternatively, that or alternatively we could say elsewhere the Torah lists their lineage, the name of their fathers, and there we can't say it. In that case where he lists it twice, we can't say it's the Par ben Bakar because it states but we never find that the slaves are listed with the names of their fathers, and so therefore we could say that the lineage is only like a Par ben Bakar. So now the Gemara brings another dispute with the mitzvah of Puravu. We learned Hayu Obanim Umesu. Let's say Rahman al-Islan, a tragic situation. You have children and the children die. Have you fulfilled the mitzvah of Puravu? Ravuna Amar Kiyem Puravu. Rabbi Ravuna says you fulfilled it. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Lo Kiyem. Rabbi Yochanan says no. If your children Rahman al-Islan pass away, you have not fulfilled it. Ravuna Amar Kiyem. Ravuna says you fulfilled the mitzvah Mishum D'Ravasi. Because of a statement of Ravasi, the Amar Ravasi, in Ben David Bacha Yechalu Kol Neshama Shebeguf, a mystical statement. When is Ben David? Who's Ben David? Who's the son of David? The Mashiach. When's the Mashiach going to come? Only when all the neshamos of the guf have gone out. So when you have a child, you're taking the soul out of the guf. there are souls waiting to come into the world. So even though the child will die, you've done your part in bringing that soul into the world, and that's going to help bring the Mashiach, because it states in the verse, Ki ruach milfanai, as it states in the verse, Ki ruach milfanai ya'atof, the wind or the spirit will fly before me. So that's why Rav Huna says you fulfill the mitzvah, because you've brought the souls out into the world from their garment in the upper world, and therefore you're bringing the Mashiach. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan says, let's look at the practical thing. Rabbi Yochanan says, you haven't done it, because you need to settle the world. Guess what? They're not here. So therefore the world needs to be settled, and you haven't settled them. So therefore you haven't fulfilled it. Meisvei, so the Gemara challenges this from a brisa. It says, "B'nei banim arei ein kabanim," that your grandchildren are like children. At first glance, we'll look at Rashi very quickly on the top of 62b. Rashi says the assumption is that if the male or the female dies and he has another grandchild that combines with either the male or the female, that they could combine with the grandchild can combine with their uncle or their aunt to fulfill the mitzvah. And this proves that he must have had a child who died, and therefore he can fulfill the mitzvah. Otherwise, he hasn't fulfilled it. So the Gemara says, no, that's not a proof. That is, that's not talking about a case of death. That's talking about a case of where you already had one child, and that child now has another child. So now you can combine to make the two children that you need according to Beis Hillel's approach. Meisvei, the Gemara says, let's challenge this. B'nei banim areim kabanim. That says the grandchildren are like children for the mitzvah pru'urvu. Meis echa mehem. If one of the children dies, oshen nimtzat tzris, or if one of them is found to be unable to have children, well, kiyam period v'rivya. You've not fulfilled it. And so therefore, this is a tiyufta of Rav Huna, explicitly tiyufta of Rav Huna, because Rav Huna says you fulfill the mitzvah even if your children die. But according to this approach, you have to have two in the world. If you don't have two in the world, you have not fulfilled it. So it says the Gemara, B'nei banim areim kabanim. What does this mean when it says children, grandchildren are like children? Savra Abaye Lameimar. Abaye thought to say what this means is that children can fulfill the place, the grandchildren can fulfill the place of children. That's only in a circumstance where bra livra, where if your son had another son, and then your son passed away, then the grandson can fulfill their place. Uvirata livrata, or your daughter had a daughter, and that can fulfill the place. V'kol came bra livarta, and for sure, if your son had a daughter. Aval barto livra, but if you had a son and your son had a daughter, they thought to say, "Lo, that wouldn't work." Amarlei, no. Rabbi says, no, they say even if your son had a daughter and then your son passed away, your daughter fulfills this place because you're settling the world. Dekuli alma, everybody's at the position. Trey mechad lo. That everybody's going to have the position that if you have one son and that son gives birth to a son and a daughter, that's not going to be sufficient. Mar says, really? V'lo, is it not sufficient? But didn't the Rabbanan say to Rav Sheshes, Nesiv Isasav Oed Bani? They told him, go get married and have children. He says, I already have grandchildren, I'm good. So we see that Rav Sheshes says he's good with his grandchildren. Gemara says, no, there he's just trying to push him off. Why? The Rav Sheshes, he had a terrible condition. Rav Sheshes, he had become sterile. Why? Mipirkei de Rav Huna. We're going to see this a few times over the next days because Rav Huna used to give very long shiurim, and Rav Sheshes held it in, and it's very dangerous if you have to hold it in. You can get according to the Gemara, you can become sterile. But nowadays we know that if you don't go to the bathroom when you need to, you could get sick. You can get sick long term. It's very dangerous. So therefore, when you have to go to the bathroom, you go to the bathroom. And we're having this year in person, and one of the people here went to the bathroom at the start. So he's very good. We see Rav Huna must have given very long shiurim because a whole bunch of people, we're going to see over the next few days, they held it in and they got sick. So Amalei Rabba Rabba Bar Mari, Milsadam Rabbanan. How do we know this idea? B'nei Banim Mari Kavanim. How do we know this idea that grandchildren are like children? Maybe we learn out from what Lot says to Yaakov. Habanos Binosai Banim Banai. Your daughters are like my daughters. Your sons are like my sons. Is that the source? But Lot also said Hatzon Soni. Your sheep are my sheep. That's not sufficient. So the Gemara says, Hachinami. Do you want to say that too? Ella dekanis minai. No, it means that your sheep came from me. Hachinami dekanis minai. It just means that your children came from me. Ella me'acha, from here. This is the source. It says ve'achar ba'chetron albas machir avi Gilad v'teu loes seguv. That afterwards, Chetron came to the daughter of Machir, father of Gilad, and he gave birth to Seguv. Uksiv mini Machir yardu mecholkim. Uksiv Yehuda mecholki. And we see from here that only the people from the tribe of Judah are called Mecholkim. And so therefore it's proof that that the intent is not to say that the grandchildren of Machir were Mecholkim, but rather that from the sons of the daughter of Machir were Mecholkim. And that has to come from Yehuda. So the Gemara says, Masnisin, our Mishnah that says that after you have a son and daughter according to Beis Hillel, or two sons according to Beis Shammai, you fulfill the mitzvah, you can stop having children. Our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yeshua, the Tanya Rabbi Yeshua Omer, Nasa Adam Isha B'Yalduso. If a man marries a woman while he's young, Yisa Isha B'Zkinuso. Get married again when you're old. If you have children when you're young, have children again when you're old, as it says, Baboker Zira. As Zarecha, it says in Koheles in the morning, sow your seed. Don't retire when you're older. Don't keep sowing. You don't know which of your children will turn out okay. And you don't know. You need to have meaning to say, and perhaps together they'll be good. So you need to keep having. Rabbi Kiva Omer, what does Rabbi Kiva say? So even though you learn Torah while you're young, Yom Torah biziknu. So keep going. When you have students when you're young, go again and have more students when you're old, as it says, Amru, they said about Rabbi Akiva, and this is the source of the morning practices during the time of the Omer period which we're in. They said about Rabbi Akiva, Shnei Masar Elaf Zugim Talmidim Ayu. Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students. 12,000 pairs of students. Me give us on Tripas. He had it from Givas until on Tripas. V'kulam Meisu b'Perak Echad. All of them died in one time. And elsewhere, the Brisa says they died from Pesach at Pros Atzeres, which Pros usually means 15 days before. So that's why we have this period of the Omer, because Pros 15 days. So some say that this refers to the days they didn't die, and some say it means that they died up until Lag BaOmer or the day after Lag BaOmer. And that's how we get the different positions. What? Pros Atzeres, 15 days before Shavuos. So some say it means that's when they stopped dying on the 34th day, or some say it means there were 15 days if you count the number of days of holy days like Shabbos or Rosh Chodesh, that those are the days they didn't die. And they all died because they didn't give honor next to each other. Why? And so some say that they're called pairs because Rabbi Akiva was trying to fix this by treating each other with respect. It doesn't say that they were mean to each other, just they didn't give each other enough respect. They didn't honor each other. The whole world was desolate. Until Rabbi Akiva came to our teachers, the Rebbes in the south, and he taught them. And who are they? Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. Torah, and they all established the Torah at that time. By the way, you see from here that from 5 people you can establish all the Torah in the world. And we have here on our Zoom, we have 11 accounts. We have 10 accounts now. Somebody left. We don't know who. But we have in person here 7 of us. Imagine how much Torah we can establish. If they did this with 5, we could just work tons harder. And Kula Meisumi Pesach. Sarah. So according to this price, they all die from Pesach until Shavuos. They all die from Pesach until Shavuos, and that's why we have the Omer period. And this, even though the morning practices are not mentioned in the Gemara, that came later, this is the source for the idea. And Amar they all died a terrible death. What's this terrible death? Amar Nachman Askara, this choking disease. And Amar Masna Alacha Rabbi Yeshua. The law is like Rabbi Yeshua that even though you get married when you're young, you have to get married again when you're older. We'll stop here, God willing. If anybody has any questions, I'll address them.